Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics. So, an unholy trio of Reform UK ghouls in Lincolnshire, near me, Richard Tice, Andrea Jenkins and Sean Matthews, the MP, the Mayor and the head of the council respectively, have said that they are declaring war on net zero. Net zero policies provide cheaper, more secure energy, more jobs in energy research and development and manufacturing, and allow us to play our part in still having an environment fit for human habitation for our children and grandchildren. So given that there aren't any real debates to be had over the benefits, why are Reform UK so opposed to net zero? In a nutshell, let's look at the money. But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So Reform UK claim to be a grassroots movement, but is that really true? What if behind all the populist talk and the promises to, the little guy, there was a very different story, a story about big money? Well, a deep dive into Reform UK's finances has revealed a fairly troubling pattern. It shows a party not funded by the masses, but bankrolled by a tiny interconnected network of multimillionaires, a network with deep vested interests in fossil fuels, polluting industries, and groups dedicated to questioning climate science. This isn't a story about politics as usual. It's about how a powerful few have bought a political party and bend national policy to protect their own profits. Today, we're going to look at the money behind those policies. See, Reform UK effectively exploded onto the political scene by positioning itself as the only real opposition to what it calls the net zero zealots. Its entire platform is built on a simple radical promise to tear up Britain's climate commitments. If you look at their 2024 manifesto, they called it their contract. It's clear they pledged to scrap net zero entirely. They want to fast track new licenses for North Sea oil and gas, restart fracking, even open up new coal mines. At the same time, they plan to scrap all subsidies for renewable energy, a move that would kill investment in the UK's clean energy sector and increase energy bills. Party figures like Richard Tice, the deputy leader, have been relentless, calling the climate emergency a con and claiming there is no climate crisis. He's publicly called carbon dioxide the main driver of global warming. Well, it's just plant food, isn't it? That's not a problem. They frame this as a common sense plan to lower energy bills and free the country from expensive green policies. But to see if it's a genuine people's crusade, you have to ask a simple question. Who's paying for it? See, once you dig into the financial records, that picture of a grassroots movement quickly falls apart. An investigation by the climate group DeSmog found that since the 2019 election, over £2.3 million has flowed into Reform's coffers from a very small number of backers. Now, that funding from people and companies with direct ties to fossil fuels and climate science denial has made up 92% of the party's declared donations in that time. That's not a party being funded by thousands of small supporters, is it? The records show it's overwhelmingly reliant on a handful of very wealthy men. I mean, let's start with a key figure in the network, Terence Mordaunt. He's a shipping and property magnate whose company, First Corporate Consultants, has funneled in at least £200,000 to Reform UK. Mordaunt isn't just a businessman, though. He's a director and the former chairman of the Global Warming Policy Foundation. Now, for those who don't know, this group is a London-based think tank, often called the UK's most prominent climate science denial group. For years, it's published reports questioning the scientific consensus, because remember, there is a scientific consensus, on climate change and lobbied against climate action. They've even received funding themselves from US dark money sources with links to oil fortunes. Mordaunt himself perfectly captures the group's worldview, having said in an interview, "No one has proved yet that CO2 is the culprit for climate change." A statement that directly contradicts the UN's panel on climate change and indeed well over a century of consistent scientific research and peer reviews. So a major Reform UK donor is also a key figure in the UK's top climate skeptic organisation. But that's not the only connection. The party's deputy leader, Richard Tice, he's a multimillionaire property developer with an estimated net worth of tens of millions of pounds. He has been the party's financial backbone himself. He's donated over £1 million of his own money and provided another, I think, £1.5 million in loans from his company to keep the party afloat during the last Parliament. This is the same man who publicly calls evidence for man-made climate change garbage. Then you've got Jeremy Hosking, a financier and major political donor. His investment firm manages a portfolio with over £100 million invested in fossil fuels, mostly in the oil industry. He has personally given over £1.7 million to Reform UK and its predecessor, the Brexit Party. Then you've got David Lilly, metals and mining investor. He's donated £364,000. Christopher Harben, investor with interest in aviation fuel, has been the party's single biggest contributor over its lifetime, like the full project going way back, like £10 million he's given. So you've got a clear picture emerging here. The people bankrolling Reform UK, they're not ordinary voters. They're not the grassroots. Farage claims his party is funded by the masses. Well, if that's the case, why isn't it showing up in their accounts? No, it's not funded by the masses. It's funded by a group of rich men who could all comfortably fit around a table at one of their rich guy restaurants. They're a small elite club of millionaires whose fortunes are specifically tied to industries that are threatened by serious climate action. When you put Reform UK's policies side by side with the business interests of its funders, the overlap is impossible to ignore. It looks less like a political platform and more like a business plan. Consider their pledge to fast-track licenses of North Sea oil and gas. Who benefits? Investors like Jeremy Hosking's firm with hundreds of millions tied up in the fossil fuel industry. Consider their plan to scrap the windfall tax on oil and gas profits. That's a policy that would hand billions back to the very energy giants whose pollution is driving the crisis. Consider their promise to scrap renewable energy subsidies. That doesn't just halt climate progress. It directly attacks the competition of their funders. It protects the fossil fuel industry from the ever cheaper threat of wind and solar. Companies like Terence Mordaunt's Bristol Port, which handles fossil fuel imports, they've got a clear financial interest in slowing the transition to domestic renewables. Even their populist rhetoric on the cost of living runs hollow. Analysis shows scrapping renewables and relying on volatile gas markets raises energy bills for British households by the billions in the long run. We saw this in real time. After the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia, domestic energy prices doubled. Business energy prices more than that. Why? Why? Just because the international price of gas increased massively. For the party's donors, the agenda being pushed by Reform UK aligns perfectly with their financial interests. It removes tax burdens, eliminates green competition, helps secure a future for the polluting industries that made them rich. It's a policy platform designed for the financial benefit of the few, disguised as a populist revolt for the many. Now, here's the astonishing part of this, however. The anti-climate agenda funded by this small group of millionaires is not even in line with the voters they're trying to attract. It's the opposite. We've had multiple polls. There was a recent poll just May this year by More in Common, revealed that an overwhelming 71% of reform-leaning voters actually support higher taxes on big polluters like oil and gas companies to pay for climate change damages. Just repeat that. 7 out of 10 of their own voters right now, the ones who say they would vote for them, want to tax the polluters. That exposes the giant chasm between Reform's funders and its target voting base. While the party's donors fund a campaign to scrap windfall taxes, their voters want those companies to pay more. While Richard Tice and Terence Mordaunt question the reality of the climate crisis, the poll found that 67% of reform-leaning voters are worried about the increasing damage it's causing. The party's entire premise that it speaks for ordinary people sick of green policies completely collapses. The truth is the British public, including Reform UK supporters across the political spectrum, is worried about climate change and wants the biggest polluters to pay their fair share. Reform UK's leadership isn't channeling the will of the people. The will of the people aren't paying them enough. It's serving the financial interests of its backers, hoping its voters don't notice or will just prioritise hate for immigrants, right? So where does that leave us? Well, We've seen that the party positions itself as the voice of the people, but is actually bankrolled by an elite few. We've seen that its signature policy, abandoning climate action, because that's what they spend most of their time talking about, by the way, is perfectly aligned with the financial interests of its millionaire backers in polluting industries. I mean, you just point out a few things. We look at Reform UK have got MPs in Parliament now, yeah? What do they turn up for? What do they not turn up for? They claim to care about immigration. Don't really see Farage at immigration debates. They claim to care about the grooming gangs. Yeah, there's been debates on that. They don't really turn up for that. Oh, but they turn up for anything that Ed Miliband gives on climate action. They turn up for that, to attack that, because that's what they really care about. You know, what matters to their backers. And we've seen this agenda is fundamentally at odds with the views of the British public, including a majority of the party's own potential voters who want to see polluters held to account. You know, this isn't a story about left versus right. It's a story about whose interests our political system serves. Is it the public and of the environment that the public need? Or is it a small handful of wealthy men who are probably too old to care about the consequences in a couple of generations, who see this political party as another investment? They've bought it. They've bought it and they're going to use it for their own ends. And the best defence against this kind of influence is knowing what's really going on behind the curtains. The more people who understand where Reform UK's motivation comes from, in cold hard cash, the harder it is for the agenda to succeed. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And for more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.